like to welcome everybody to CEO Connect 2011-2012 series. This kickoff today. I'm very excited right here to have Robert Quinn to be our speaker, and Bob actually has the notoriety of being the first speaker at CEO Connect. I don't know if you knew this, Bob, but it's about 1997. I was trying to figure out what year we actually started, but it's been going a long time. And I had a small group of about 8 executives who were reading one of Bob's books. I think it was Deep Change, probably at that point. And we all got really fascinated by the book, and I said, well, how about if we have Bob come in and speak to us? And Bob was gracious enough to agree to do that. So I had it upstairs at the other Zingerman, as you recall. Actually, Ari was part of the group, so it made it easy to do that. And then I said, well, why don't you guys bring a few friends? And, you know, so the next thing I knew, there were probably 30 or 40 people in the room just hearing Bob Quinn was going to speak. And that kind of gave me the impetus to have a monthly series of bringing in speakers to talk about interesting things going on in the world of organizational psychology, development, business, and also things that are going on at the university. So Bob has been very gracious. I think it's the third time you spoke here. And that kind of, I don't know if you realize that you were the inaugural speaker there. Yeah, no, that's right. And I think of him as kind of George Washington, because he was the first speaker. You know, and, so it's really exciting to have Bob back to kick off the season. We have a great season coming up, and hopefully everybody has got the schedule. If not, please let me know, and we'll get that to you. We have a new sponsor in addition to United Bank and Zingerman's, Roger Rail. Roger, raise your hand. He is a media maven, I guess I would call him. He's a consultant. He's been in the world of internet and computers for 30-some years, and is now doing a lot with social media. He's kind of the go-to guy if you have questions and you need help on getting your social media activities going. Roger will give you some great ideas, generally consulting about business, and he's going to be video these, and Roger, you're going to be putting them up on the internet.
That's right.
Yeah, so they should be up pretty quickly after the event, and we'll supply Bob as well. We normally go around the room, but we're so crowded today, and I want to leave time for Bob, that I'm just going to ask a few people to talk about what's going on in the community, and I'm going to spatter this a little bit so that we have some entrepreneurs with new news. We have some established businesses that are going to town. We have a couple of businesses where people have spoke over the years, and now they're beginning to get traction. So, of course, everybody's talking these days about creating jobs, and I think what we're seeing is that Michigan, which was at the bottom early, is beginning to come out of this at a relatively good rate. And we now have a governor who is very, very focused on job creation, and hopefully we could get out with the positivity of the state. So one of the good things that happened this summer was that the Traverse City Sleeping Bear Dunes area was noted as the best, most beautiful vacation spot. I want to ask Bill Milliken, who's a native boy from Traverse City. Bill, can you just tell us what you're doing this weekend? Because I think it's kind of cool. Say who you are, what your business is.
I'm Bill Milliken. I have a commercial real estate brokerage business based here in Ann Arbor. On the way in this morning, I shared with Rob that tomorrow I'm on my way up north to ride in the Leland Harvest Bicycle Tour, which goes from Glen Lake up to North Port Point and back, one of Michigan's prettiest spots, surrounds the dunes area.
You're going to go right by Jim Winslow's house. And Bill, grew up in Traverse City, which is a nice spot to do that, yeah. We've got some other people. Megan, where's Megan? Okay, behind. Come on out, Megan. Megan's business has been around for what, about 5-6 years? 5 years, and she's spoken here before about what she's doing, but having some good traction, and maybe you could just tell us what you're doing and what's going on and how you're expanding.
Sure. My business, we build e-learning, so training that's developed on the internet for companies or organizations that have to train a large number of people consistently and over time. We've doubled in size this summer.
Yeah.
So we've actually picked up some new local people to come and join us. We've actually brought back 2 Michigan kids who had moved out elsewhere looking for jobs and brought them back. And I have a whole new set of problems now. Much better problems than I did.
Tell them what you're going to be doing to solve these problems.
I'm working with you and and a pair of other geniuses to help me as an advisory board and work with me on strategy issues going forward. So be a little bit more intentional about this growth and where we're going.
Yeah. So Megan's going to be participating in, we call it Great Lakes Leadership Council, and this is a group where I'm putting together consultants to come in and work on a quarterly basis with companies. So Megan will be working with me and Lynn Middleton and Jim, and so we'll have an ability to help her grow her business even further. So thank you very much, and good luck with all that. And next month, actually, something that will help Megan, since she's doing online learning, is that we're going to have the speakers, the leaders of Internet 2 here. Are they here? No, they're supposed to sign up. But, pardon?
They're at Merit.
They're at Merit. I'm sorry, Merit. Okay. And Ellen, maybe you could talk a little bit about Merit, Internet 2, and what's going to be happening there. And Ellen also could promote someone who's looking for a really great opportunity, namely her.
So Merit,
Here we are.
I'm Ellen Vaughn, and currently I'm a free agent. More about that later. So Merit is the statewide high-speed network for research and education in the state of Michigan. And Internet 2 is the national version of that. And next month, the leadership from Merit will come and talk about what Merit is doing within the state of Michigan. And actually, as a result of the first 2 rounds of stimulus spending, they were able to get some funding that enabled them to do an additional build-out. And they'll have exciting things to say about what the capabilities that have increased in the networking arena within the state of Michigan. And they'll also touch on what's going on nationally in that arena.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What are you looking for?
Well, what am I looking for? So now I'm a free agent. I have 30 years experience in the information technology sector. I worked in private industry. I spent 10 years at the University of Michigan and then 10 years at Internet 2. And over that time, I've developed the skill of being able to absorb complex technical topics and then being able to translate them into language that a non-technical audience can understand. So a tech translator, if you will. And I also have done relationship management, that kind of thing. So right now, I'm looking for opportunities where I can help. Be another set of eyes and ears, another way of looking at a project, and interested in project work. Thanks.
You translate geek speak.
I do.
Your 3-second intro, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So Ellen's actually, just as Bob is, we go back to our children growing up together. That's how we know Ellen. And one of her daughters is now living in Africa. So things, spread out. And Bob spent some time globally. And a couple other people have had some successes this summer. Mike, you want to come up and talk about what's going on with your business and how you guys are expanding and hiring?
Sure. So I'm Mike Klein with Online Tech. We are the largest managed data center operator in the state of Michigan. Another way to say it is we're the cloud. So we hear about cloud computing. We do cloud computing. 3 major announcements. One, we invested $1 million in our data center up in Michigan, just south of Quinn. That was an announcement that just came out. The second one is we just got our HIPAA certification thanks to all the work that Jason Yeager, our operations director, went through. Anybody who's looking for health care and needs to be HIPAA certified can now sit inside our data center. And the third announcement is we are on the verge of opening a 3rd data center here in Ann Arbor, another 20,000 square feet, probably be announced in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And most people wondered where that term cloud came from, Mike. And we've always talked about Mike's head is in the cloud, so he's actually invented the cloud. That's where that word came from. But now you know. You learned it here. So anybody else who's got a young entrepreneur here from Zingerman's want to come up and introduce yourself and talk about some of the opportunities? Zingerman's is one of our sponsors with United Bank and Roger, and they are very good at kind of mentoring and nurturing people. We're going to start some other businesses, so maybe you can talk about that, Derek.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Derek Thomas. I'm a young entrepreneur. The restaurant I'm going to be launching is called 100% Cereal Salad More. It's going to be Michigan's very first cereal bar.
Say it again.
100% Cereal Salad More.
Okay, well, okay, get that right.
Yeah, definitely. Michigan's first breakfast cereal restaurant, and I'm kind of here at Zingerman's right now, just learning as much as I can from two of the greatest business owners that I've ever met in my life. I'm here right now just trying to learn from some of the greatest minds in the area. One of the reasons why I decided to go into this field is just so that we can do like you guys are doing right now, just help everybody tap into that full and potential and reach the maximum that they possibly can reach. Definitely want to try to make this planet a better place, and it starts with each and every individual. So not only are we a restaurant, but we want to try to elevate everybody's mind, try to impress the principles and virtues that guide the universe, and help everybody become that much better and accomplish those dreams that all of us have inside of us. So it's an honor to be here. I'm really excited. Thank you.
So I got
Another question for you. Rice Krispies or Cheerios?
Rice Krispies treats.
And a couple other of our speakers coming up. Scott Moore, who's, come on up, Scott. And Scott is a professor at the Ross School of Business. And Scott, maybe you can talk about what you're up to and what you're going to be speaking about this. It's in the spring, but maybe give us a preview.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning. So for the last 7 years, I've been head of the BBA program. So, you know, MBA, that's master's, BBA, that's bachelor's, so that's the kids. And we have had the MAP program for the MBAs, which sends 480 of our students around the world to do consulting projects for 7 weeks. Well, we're sort of rolling out a junior version of that, which is, of course, I would say, since I was in charge, new and improved. So we're starting smaller because I'm not going to send 20-year-olds around the world. I might send them and have sent them to Toledo. And that seems to be good enough for me and for them for right now. At least I won't tell them that there's bigger and better things out there just yet.
Brandon Inch, so, you know.
Yeah, hopefully come back and bat better than when you go. What we do is we have 3 to 4 weeks of workshops where these kids, again, they're 20 years old, and we help them learn about what it is to do a consulting project, building high-quality relationships, working on a team, project management, stuff like that. And then we have 10 weeks where they have a team coach and then another student who's been through this project, and they have me and good luck. And they work for 10 weeks for a company doing a real job. So they worked with Domino's, Zingerman's, Visteon, Power Brushes, a startup in wind turbine technology. So all sorts of different projects. And at the end, they make a presentation to the company, they make a presentation to me, they write a 50 to 100 page report, and it's on things like market entry strategies, new product introductions, stuff like that. And their work, as far as I can tell, is indistinguishable from the MAP projects that I used to supervise. So what I'm going to talk about in May is the process that we go through and what you're looking through for, what I'm looking for in leadership development for these new generation of leaders that's coming up. So I look forward to talking with you beforehand and afterwards, and then anytime leading up to May.
These companies to get some of these teams.
Yeah, we have proposals you can submit anytime. We run this thing twice. We run it in winter, so that would be, I guess, for the next 9 months. No, we start in January through April, and then we also have a May through August process. So either one of those.
Joke about the winter.
Yeah, I won't give up my day job.
And if you could find a way to get Scott back to the South, he probably, wouldn't mind too much. You get used to Michigan at some point. If we can get some of that good Traverse City winter, that would be better here. Because it's kind of, yeah. we got lots of other folks here. United Bank is one of our sponsors, and we've got several people who would like to speak on behalf of United, make a pitch here about what. Gary, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We always have Bob Chapman come up, but Gary's head of wealth management at the bank, and maybe you can talk about what you guys are doing.
Sure. Gary Hopla, I'm the president of the Wealth Management Group at United. And you know, we have local experts that are right in town to help you achieve your financial goals, from your most complex financial transaction to great client experience in our offices. So come on in and visit us at United. You really feel the difference at what we do. And they're local. You're not going to Chicago, you're not going to Cleveland or Cincinnati or New York. We got local experts there, CFAs, CFPs, CPAs, we got attorneys on staff, we got a whole bunch of folks that can really help you. Everything from your financial side, also to your business side. So come on in, we can do small business loans for you and have a great client experience with our organization. We are expanding. We're going to push out into the Livingston market, so that'll be coming. We're putting a loan production office up in Brighton. So things are growing at United. We're excited.
And Tom, come on up. We have a brand new author in the room, and Tom Malosh is one of our multiple serial entrepreneurs. I guess he must work with you. Cereal bar, yeah. I like that. Yeah, I just made that connection. Brilliant. But Tom has been in the forefront, one of the founders of Menlo, I think, originally, and moved on to some other opportunities. And he's been looking at addictions lately, mainly our addictions to Facebook, right? And how we can utilize that to drive business. So maybe you can talk about your book and what you're up to.
Sure, yeah. I have actually sold my partnership in Menlo a few years ago and was launching a software company myself, building some products. And if you've heard of me at Menlo, then I did my job because, or if you've heard of Menlo, because we actually featured Rich Sheridan. So I did all the marketing and PR work. We laid out that whole plan, which involved a massive amount of public speaking. That was, before Facebook. If I was launching today, I would be on here. And so I was launching my software company. I kept emailing this guru who I loved. We built a lot of our material around launching Menlo. It's Harry Marshall out of Chicago. It's one of the first guys who wrote on Google AdWords and pay-per-click. And I kept sending him notes like every couple of weeks as I learned something interesting about Facebook. And finally he's like, Tom, why don't you come out here and let's write the Facebook book together. And that's what we did. We wrote a book, The Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising, published by Entrepreneur Magazine. The nice thing about publishing with Harry is, Entrepreneur Magazine actually paid a nice retainer to them.
Oh, good. You didn't pay them to write it?
No, I didn't pay them. It was really nice. I'm like, I'll write it, but you got to write a check. This is like the way I work. And it's really about spending $1, to make $1 and a penny. It's not about social marketing, it's not about twittering, it's not about tweeting, it's not about posting status messages in the desperate hope. By the way, I actually mentioned Zingerman's in here, just so you know. So free publicity for Zingerman's.
I don't know what you're talking about, but...
Because it's a great example. Zingerman's has 35,000 fans on Facebook. They also have a mail order business. Now, if you were to send a postcard to 35,000 of your customers to say, remind them of your holiday specials around Christmas time, you might spend $7,000 mailing, that number of postcards.
We do that too, but...
Yeah. You could also advertise on Facebook. In front of each one of those 35,000 fans, you could get 10 impressions of the ad that specifically invites them to click to your mail order house. And if you read my book and do it well, that'll cost you maybe about $200 to get that message in front of your 35,000.
That includes the price.
$225 to get the message out. So I brought some copies because I wasn't going to even bring it, but Robert suggested I do. I have more in the car. So if you're interested, it's available in 2 weeks. The bookstores, Amazon's shipping them now, and I have some of them. So Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising.
All right, Tom.
And I think a lot of these folks that are talking today, and Thomas is a great example, have leveraged what I would think of as social ability, social network, social connections to launch their business. I mean, Thomas, we have 3 or 4 partners at Menlo, talking about this relationship with Perry, leading to a book. And when I talk in my coaching work about people who are succeeding, it's all about the relationships. That seems to be the key to driving things. And Facebook is a great way to do that. I found myself using Facebook more and more, not so much just for business, but just sharing things that are of interest. I went to Ferndale High School. I'm sure many of you are graduates. The most important people in the world went to Ferndale High School. But anyway, we started a classes of 60 to 70 that have a Facebook page. And the other day I posted something about a woman who's a friend of mine who has cancer, and we got just tons of outpouring of interest. She was able to get lots of support from all these friends that she hadn't seen in years. So I mean, this is the power of the social media. And in a way, it's what we hope happened here, because I don't really actively promote people trying to do their business here, but I hear a lot of stories about how people met somebody here, and that led to somebody else, to some business, to some relationship, to a job. So this is a kind of an in-action way of doing this, and I hope to grow this year. I'm actually thinking about starting an Entrepreneurs Connect, and I'd like to talk to you about that. That would feature exclusively a place for entrepreneurs to come to talk to each other about what they're doing, and bring in people like Scott and speakers who can really help entrepreneurs succeed, people like Megan who have had that story and have succeeded themselves. I could go around the room and probably each of you interview the story. Marissa, I know you're adding jobs this year with your organization. You've gone from one when I started talking to you about 5 or 6 years ago. How many people are you employed?
12, hoping to hire number 13. And
Okay.
we're desperately in need of a digital marketing specialist. If anybody knows anybody, please talk to me.
And people, not to promote CEO Connect, but most people who start with CEO Connect grow at the rate of several thousand. So Ari, when I first met Ari, what year is that, Ari? You started at Deli.
When you met, we started Deli 82. I don't know when you met me.
Well, I met you when you first opened the deli. I remember walking in the first day and saying,
I was thinking of the men's group.
oh, yeah.
89.
But I mean, you've grown from 10 employees to what are you guys doing?
500 and something.
Yeah.
We're
And
about
you
to
made,
hire 250 for the holidays.
wow. So one of the biggest employers in town. I mean, can anybody top it, Mark? How many of you guys
You're
employ
welcome
through?
to stop it. We're not charging. In Ann Arbor, we're up about 750.
750. So
I don't really want to be the biggest.
yeah. So this is Mark. You say what your business is.
Yeah, I'm Mark Sutter. I'm the CEO of Trimble Cardiovascular down on Jackson Road. We're the market leader for open products for open heart surgery. So if anybody had bypass surgery, I hope you don't, but it's most likely you use one of our products. But we have gone through a lot of growth in the last year and a half. Maybe about 150 people. We're at about 75 to 100 more. One of our biggest dilemmas is how to change our culture and do that when you have so many people. So I look forward to that talk today.
And what are you looking for just in terms of that job opportunities?
A lot of engineering, a lot of people with medical device experience in the regulatory affairs area. There's a lot of compliance and regulatory change in our industry, and so having people typically from the coast that have that experience, but in addition to that, just some great core engineers too.
How are you finding recruiting people to Michigan? How challenging is that?
Engineering has been good. We find a lot of good engineering talent. We can cross the bridge from automotive and other areas into our industry and then train them. It's a little bit difficult to bring people in. I'm searching right now for a chief medical officer, basically an MD, and I've been having a lot of difficulty getting the people from California and Boston area to consider coming here. So that is a challenge still of Ann Arbor of promoting, and that this is a fantastic place to live. If you've never lived here, how do you get people to know it?
It's that critical mass problem, because I know when I was coaching Roger Newton at Aspiria on the same problem, and medical people didn't want to come because if it didn't work out or when it stopped, what's next? And they're going to have to move again. So I think that critical mass of having enough people is a big challenge. So 750 up to 650. This is where the jobs are. John, how about you guys? How's your job? What are you employing in Ann Arbor now? John Edwards. Well, you may do the whole company. Edwards Printing and Publishing.
Hi, John Edwards from Edwards Brothers. We're on State Street. Another one across from Arbor, Volkswagen. That's who we are. We have about 400 people in Ann Arbor. We have locations in North Carolina and about 8 other locations throughout the country. So we're about 700, a little over 700 people company. I'm in the printing business, so I love it when people bring a book. I'm glad to promote an e-book. But our business is changing dramatically, as you all know. At the same time, our plants are full right now. So and I've known Bob for a long time. Bob's on our board for how long? 15 years. So I'm always, whenever I get a chance to come in here and speak, I always try to make it.
And again, there's a lot of industries in this town that we need to promote more. Medical device is one. There's several companies. New Step is growing. There's other medical device companies. Of course, Stryker in the central part of the state. The book publishing business is what, six of you guys in this area. Probably several thousand people are employed in the book publishing business. We've of course lost borders, and all the emphasis is on what we've lost. But I think we really have to build on our strengths in manufacturing, engineering, social media. These are all things that we can really grow with. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Bob to come up. Are we all set, Stephanie, on the slides? No, we didn't make it. Okay. We were trying to get slides. I apologize. We printed these slides too small, so you're going to need to get out your magnifying glasses for some of them, and I do apologize. We should have printed them on a bigger sheet. But just a little bit of background about Bob, and I could have several people in the room introduce Bob because he's touched lives in Ann Arbor at various different levels. First contact I had with Bob was as a coach, and he was coaching basketball. He wasn't coaching me, fortunately, because he would have had his hands full, but he was coaching my son, actually Dan's in the back, I want to raise your hand, Dan, his basketball team, and Travis, Quinn, and Dan were on that team, and Bob, I used to watch Bob coach, and he was pretty masterful, particularly dealing with Travis Quinn, who he's doing great now, but he was a challenge at about 8 years old because he wanted to take all the shots and do all the work. And he was a good player, but Bob would get frustrated. And I remember sitting next to Delsa Quinn in the stands, and I said, Delsa, why do you have your head in your hands? And she said, I can't believe that's my son. I can't believe it. Bob was very patient with it. And then Bob and I got into conversations, and this was, I think, the early 90s, because Bob was publishing a book called Deep Change, and it was about the dilemma. He called it the Deep Change, Slow Death Dilemma. And to me, this is a very profound dilemma, a very profound book. It's a book that's had great impact over the years. And I was publishing a book called Awakening from the Deep Sleep, which was about challenges that men were experiencing in society. So we commiserated about our books and tried to help each other promote those books. And I got more and more interested in what Bob was doing, and he got more interested in what I was doing, and we kind of tried to help each other learn some new things. And Bob then, I know him secondly as a friend, and thirdly as a teacher, because he enabled me to come into the University of Michigan Business School and do some coaching as he was working with the Reuters Corporation. They brought, I think, 800 of their executives through the program, including their new chief executive officer, who was Tom Gloser. And one of the very touching things about Deep Change, and I was just thinking about this weekend, that some of you may have seen on Facebook that I was in New York for the September 11th events, and also to work with one of the Reuters executives who's running a new program. And Reuters at that time lost, I think, 7 people to the World Trade Center disaster. They were at a conference at the Windows of the World, and so they lost 7 people. And I went to work with them. And then eventually, one of the gentlemen who came through the program did die at the World Trade Center. People went to his funeral, and they said at the funeral, they quoted about the influences on this gentleman's life, and they pulled out Bob's book and said this was the book that was on his bedside and a book that was inspiring him. So it's interesting, these connections that come around here, but that's the kind of profound impact I think Bob has as an author and as a teacher. He really makes a difference in people's lives. He's what I would think of as a true example of a change agent. And he's done this change agency from within academia. As many people here have done that within academia or as entrepreneurs or as consultants. And it's quite fascinating how that process works and how you get through to people to motivate them to make a change. So it's with my great pleasure that I want to bring up my friend Bob Quinn to talk about his current work and things that he's up to. Big hand for Bob.
When I was sitting there a few minutes ago, I had this feeling that what's going on in this room up until now is really important. And then when Rob talked about basketball, it kind of clicked in. When Daniel was in the 4th grade with those other renegades, they needed a coach. I was too busy, by my assessment. My wife had a different opinion, and you know how that goes. So I ended up coaching these kids every year for the next, until they would finish in the 8th grade, and then continue with the younger ones. I often look back on that as one of the most important things I've ever done. I thought I was really busy with important stuff. That really mattered. And I think a lot of that feeling is what goes on here. Of the local communities, local connections, things that come out of these kinds of meetings. So I salute Rob for what he does here. I think that's really important. I'm going to, I'm not going to rely very heavily on these because you'll need some kind of translator to get all of those.
Can you get Mike a little bit closer?
I will. Let me give you some brief sketches verbally so we don't have to worry as much about some of those slides.
A little closer, yeah.
Okay. I'll keep reminding you. First of all, I want to talk from the perspective of positive organization scholarship, which is a subfield that was born 10 years ago at the University of Michigan and connects to another field called positive psychology, where we shifted the bias from looking at what's normal. Almost all social science is asking the question in any given study, what's normal? We take a random sample, we pull some conclusions out, we say this is what normally happens, and it becomes true. The bias in those two fields is in a different direction. It says what's excellent in any given situation. What's excellent in the situation? So you may have a company that's falling apart. And in that falling apart, what's excellent? Well, it turns out that by asking that question, we make some very interesting discoveries about things going on in organizations. And it leads to a very different kind of information. Let me give you an image before I take that a step further. On that third slide down, which if you have tremendous eyes you may be able to read, I put in 2 quotes. The first one comes from Bucky Stefort. And in this quote, he says, I live on earth at present, and I don't know what I am. I know that I am not a category, not a thing, a noun. I seem to be a verb, an evolutionary process, an integral function of the universe. Now that's an interesting stuff. What's your reaction to that, Tom?
I love it.
Why?
It's how you experience life is this series of actions and movement, not just sitting there, a thing to be acted upon.
Okay, and I love that phrase, to be acted upon. And when we think of ourselves as a noun, we become like this table. It's very different to think of ourselves as a verb in a world that's changing. There's something very freeing about that. In that next quote, I think the print's even smaller, is my colleague Carl White, who wrote a book and talked about, I'll give you the short version. He said, let me use some bad grammar. You and I work in organizings. And what he was saying was the word organization is a noun. When you look at an organization from far away, it looks like this, and then there's a big change, and then it looks like this. When you put your telescope away and you put a microscope up there and look at your organization, what you see is constant change from minute to minute to minute. Every conversation, every phone call, every shift in the market. The organization is always changing. When we look at the far end of the curve, away from the norm, way out there at excellence, we tend to find action, motion, movement. People are verbs. They're growing and developing. The organization itself is moving constantly. And the question is, how do we shape that movement so that it's moving towards excellence? Because at every turn, the pressure, the pull is back to the norm. To rely on the hierarchy, which is a functional thing. The hierarchy is there for good reason. But it has a danger, and that's stagnation and the beginning of the slow death process. So the question is, how do I keep moving them out there? What I'm going to talk to you about a little bit is a very strange topic for a bunch of leaders, because we're pretty sophisticated characters in this room. I want to tell you about the most exciting study I've ever done. I'm just in the early phases of it. I'm studying elementary school teachers, but not ordinary elementary school teachers. I'm studying people in the top 1%. These are value-added teachers. 5 years ago, in a number of states, they began measuring value-added in education. So you remember those standard tests you used to take? Well, they still take those. But they have the mathematics to compare this year's test and last year's test, taking a lot of other variables into account. And they say to the teacher, here's your value-added score. So it's not a question, what score did you get, the absolute score? If the kids are all in the 98th percentile, that was good. And if you're in a suburban, rich district, which is a great district, well, all of a sudden, that's all up in question. You go to the middle of Detroit, find some rat-infested classroom, and some teachers moving their kids 3 years of progress in 1 year. It's a whole different measure. And it's turning education upside down. It's very political, a lot of fights. Well, there's some folks in Ohio that aren't into the political stuff. They said, what a great opportunity to learn. Let's look at these teachers who have these high value-added scores. And they did, and they called me for some academic reasons that were connected to what they were finding. I said, I want to change it, tweak it just a little bit more. I want to look not at the value-added teachers, but the very best of the value-added teachers. So a value-added teacher can be someone who moves them, if the average in a given subject is a year in 1 year, a value-added teacher might get into that value-added category by moving them a year and a half in 1 year. That's pretty impressive. The people I wanted to look at in that top 1% move their kids sometimes 3 years of progress in 1 year. I mean, this is miraculous. How in the world do those people do that? And so we started interviewing these people. One of the most humbling experiences I've ever had. In every interview, you brush with greatness. What I love about it is they look like the people in the grocery store. You know, some are tall, some are short, some are heavy, some are thin, some have really nice clothes on, some look like they're struggling, but they're all great. And it's an amazing thing to introduce. And I want to share with you a few of the things that we're finding early on. Now, all these things have to be tested with a survey after they're done with this interview phase, but some of the things in the interviews are absolutely striking and have everything to do with the people in this room. We've got a lot to learn from these school teachers. In the bottom of page 3, there's some 4 categories. There's some images missing. Categories are there. It basically suggests that at first you've got an empowered actor, you've got a culture of development, and then a complex adaptive conversation. A complex adaptive system is a system where we're connected up, we change the quality of the connection. He and I begin talking differently. The group begins to shift. And there are feedback loops. And in those feedback loops, it begins to affect me, it begins to affect you, it becomes a reinforcing cycle, and things begin to happen. Well, that notion is going to be very important to us in a few minutes. And then finally, transformative learning and increased capacity will be the thing that comes out of this, and we'll try to connect that up to your lives. So let's look at some of the ways initially that we think these teachers differ from normal teachers, or how assumptions are different from normal assumptions that get made. So looking at the top of page 4, normal assumption. Teaching is a job. You have people that work for you that have jobs. These teachers don't have jobs. They have callings. They teach because that's who they are. They absolutely love being in that room. Some of them are just obsessed with being in that room, being with those kids. And they say, this is who I am. This is why I'm on the planet, to do this. We assume that a teacher's job is to instill knowledge in people. Take the textbook, drill a hole in his head, pour it in. Teacher's job. They don't see that as their objective at all. Their job is to transform the child, to convert the child. They say things like, the kids that come into my room are from a very rough neighborhood. They don't believe that they can learn. In fact, everything they've ever been taught, socialized to believe, is that they can't learn. Not only that school is a sham. And that they're going to be dead by the time they're 26 anyway. Why would they be interested in learning? They say, my job is not to put math in her head. My job is to get her to believe that she's of value. My job is to change her identity. I want to change her into a lifelong learner. If I succeed in that, her life will be different the rest of her life. And I had one teacher say in the interviews, I asked the principal for all the worst students. I said, what? She said, I asked for all the worst students. I said, why do you do that? She said, well, I know if they don't get me, they don't have a chance. But if they get me, their life will change forever. And so I asked for the worst students. Whoa, what a stunning thing. Power flows from the role. I'm the director of such and such. You should do what I say. Pretty common assumption. They believe that power comes from character strength. It is unbelievable to listen to these folks talk about authenticity, honesty, perseverance. And they go through this long list that they're fanatic about. I tell the kids the absolute truth about everything. Parents don't do that. I had two parents come in, one parent come in last week. She said, well, he doesn't know it, but we're getting a divorce, so be sure not to tell him. To which she says, yeah, I know you're getting divorced. And the woman says, how do you know? He said, well, the kid wrote about it a month ago. And they talk about, with enormous respect, these third graders and fourth graders, and what they know, and what they can sense. And they talk about these character strengths, and how they monitor themselves constantly for that character strength. Because they understand something that, again, violates our assumptions. We assume that building an organization exists up here. Now you get the paper out, you draw that organization chart, and then you get the finances in there, and then you do all this work. And they believe that the organization they're building every September, they're entrepreneurs, every September, new organization, new people. And they've got to build an organization that's going to have output 9 months later with a kid who's moved 3 years. A kid that's not got much to start with, evidently, apparently. And they say it's all about my relationship. This kid has to have total trust in me, complete trust, because I'm going to ask him to do things he's never dared to do in his life. These people are incredibly demanding on these kids. Enormously demanding, constant challenges on these kids, which they would never take in any other environment. But they take them from these people, and these people say things like, they adore me. My students adore me, comma, they'll do anything I ask. And it's not about some hubris on being adored. It's about a relationship of development. I think from some of the things I already said, you can pick up they're enormously confident. And they're incredibly humble. And the humility is not put on. It's just, as an interviewer, you feel it. When I ask the question, what differentiates you from other teachers? They always, every single interview, blank stare. I don't know. And again, not something they're putting on. The impact and the success, that feedback loop is enormously important to them. They talk endlessly about kids they've reached and lives that have changed. And that means everything to them. Let me go down to the culture. You and I have been trained since we were little to live in a world of instrumental exchange. You give me something, I give you something. As long as we're happy with that exchange, everything's great. If you violate my expectations, now there's conflict. And the first word in sociology is exchange. The first word in economics is transaction. In law, it's contract. It's that basic notion that's at the heart of social life. These people transcend social exchange. To the side there, I talk about inherent positive regard. One teacher said, in fact, we had one set of interviews with non-value adds, and the teacher said, I respect them as long as they deserve it. One of these top 1% teachers said, totally independently, if a child is disrespectful, I correct them immediately. Whoa, on task. Comma. While maintaining complete respect for that child. Comma. I wish I could remember to do it at home. And the last phrase is crucial. Now think of it. If a child is disrespectful, I correct them while maintaining complete respect for the child. That violates our normal assumption. What she's saying, she says, I'm doing an enormous amount of work here. I'm holding the person in total positive regard no matter what they do. So I'm modeling the message, not chewing you out, disrespecting you for disrespecting the kid next to you. That's a whole nother level of operation. And then the phrase, only I can remember to do it at home. This person's working. This person is constantly elevating themselves because they understand that that's where that transformational influence process comes from. Constantly adapting in real time, relevance, they kill themselves to make stuff relevant. They say the district requires us to teach this, I refuse to do it. If it's not for the best interest of the kids, if it's not going to work for the kids, I either change it or I throw it out. It's got to be relevant every minute. They think that one moment of boredom is the worst sin in life. They'd rather die than be boring. They want total engagement all the time. Think about some of the meetings you and I go to the other day. I've been to this meeting. Ever sat in on that one? Interesting to think about. They transform peer pressure. Very conscious of this. They have mechanisms. They make sure that the informal system is totally aligned with the collective purpose. They say, if one of my kids acted out, the other kids would be shocked. No one would dare act out in my class. Not because I police them, because the other kids police them. If someone's not talking loud enough, one of my kids says, you have to talk louder. I empower them to run the class. Enormously high standards, very fast paced. They teach to the top and nurture the bottom. They don't let go of the bottom. They take good care of that bottom, but they're plugged to the top of the class, moving it along, constantly challenging, and enormous concern for that bottom group. In that next slide, I won't go through it, but there are 4 incredibly inspiring small paragraphs there describing the kinds of conversations that happen in their classes. One of the things that's interesting is we assume that education is about the instructor role. Me having a lot of expertise telling you something. They all talk about you learn to teach when you let go of that and you become a facilitator. And you facilitate the emergence of intelligence. And it's about conversation. And if you read those paragraphs, it's unbelievably stimulating descriptions. And they go up and down. They know that it looks like this. But they try to spend as much time at the top as they possibly can. And those conversations, everyone's engaged on the edge of their seat, usually not in their seat, doing stuff. Those conversations are incredibly important because think of what it means if you walk into a classroom and you're in the 4th grade and every day you feel totally respected and safe with your peers. You feel totally engaged. You feel like you're learning new things every moment. And what happens if you do that day after day after day? In the end, we see this enormous outcome in terms of value-added scores. It wasn't that I poured knowledge into the hole in his head with this textbook. It was we changed his identity. We built a culture of respect and communication and experimentation. Those conversations are action-oriented. They're doing stuff, and they're talking about it, and they're learning. Now, I'm going to flip out of that to one of the studies that was done in Positive Organization Scholarship. A study of 80 business teams. Brought them into a lab. Every word that was said in the meeting was coded. And then those conversations were analyzed. 3 groups of conversations. The first group, their conversations look like this. They start out dead, flatline, and they end dead, flatline. The second group starts off like this, but the first negative event in the meeting, they go to the flat line. The third group starts off like this, a negative event occurs, and they drop a bit, and they jump. And they always are moving up in those conversations. They correlated that with profitability. How you talk to each other predicts how much money you make. Now think about that in terms of these kids. the kinds of conversations that these teachers are facilitating is leading to the same thing, except it's learning. And what happens if every meeting we ever hold all day long, all week long, all year long is exhilarating? Now, how do you do that with topic X, which is inherently boring? In fact, I've had teachers get mad when they hear me talk about this stuff. They don't like to hear that. In fact, John and I were just talking about that. Because the system, think about the education system, it's designed against excellence. You can't even talk about excellence in many school systems. In fact, these teachers talk about, I can't tell anybody that I have value-added scores up here. My principal said, okay, I'll let you go to the workshop, but you can't come back and tell anybody that you were value-added. The entire system is geared for mediocrity or below. It's just the way it is. I suggest all systems are like that, unless we do the work to the contrary. And that work to the contrary is called leadership. It's leadership that overcomes the entropy of organizations. And that starts not out here or up here, it starts here. Because we knew this a long time ago. Transformational leaders elevate people beyond the norms through moral power, not political power. Let me just sort of close with that thought. There are three paradigms. Think of the stereotypic engineer. Not a real one, a stereotypical one. I don't even get mad at me. The engineer comes in and says, give me the money, I'll make the most beautiful widgets in the world. And you say, I'm sorry, I've got other things I also have to take care of. You don't have this much money. And he's furious. And he says, that guy, all he cares about is making people happy around here. That political crap ain't real. So then you promote him. That's right. That's what happens. And he either fails or he's transformed. And if he's transformed, he discovers political reality and becomes much more effective. He doesn't lose his technical knowledge or skills. He doesn't lose that. He gets an expanded identity and he's more functional. Most people stop there. Most of us know the world is political. But there's a fourth level. And that also requires a transformation. It's the discovery that the organization is not only a technical system and a political system, it's a moral system. Everything you say or do is a moral message that's interpreted by everybody around you. And it's not your words that are nearly as powerful as who you are. There are amazing studies about that. That demonstrate that time and time again. Well, if I were to leave a bottom line with you, another last slide there that's pretty small. Well, here's some of the kinds of questions I go out here asking myself. What's my life mission? How can I more fully envision my possibilities? How can I go beyond my current expectations? How can I become more internally directed? There's never a moment where I'm not sliding towards external direction, losing myself. It happens, no matter how I guard against it, it happens. So I've got to assess that every moment. How do I become more self-regulating? How can I craft what I'm doing so it's more intrinsically motivating? These people are totally uninterested in external rewards, recognition, any of that. It's all from in here to the point that it's shocking to talk to them. But that's what happens to them over time. How can I form relationships of equality, trust, love, and challenge? Some people are offended by that language. This is business. Change is about trust and learning together. We just wrote a paper about lean manufacturing. 2% of the lean manufacturing efforts in this country have been successful. Why? spend millions of dollars on the technology and then implement it as experts. And it dies. The places where it works is they actually do what Toyota says to do, which no one wants to hear, and you and I become equals, not an expert telling you what to do, and we learn our way together. That flies in the face of everything we know in terms of our assumption sets. How can I more fully sacrifice for the common good? Do my people see me sacrificing for the common good? Because that's what an organization really is in the end. When that dies, as it often does in the slow death process, you don't have an organization. You have a building, you have a name on it. You have a bunch of people who come to work and take paychecks and do what they're required to do. But if they're not committed to the common good, you're on the road to slow death. And it's natural not to be. Leadership is about pulling them up into that commitment to the common good. How can I more effectively join the creation of collective resources? Am I creating resources? In this room today, Rob was creating resources, making these connections. We have an exercise that we do in executive head. A lot of people from the same company. We hand out cards. We say, okay, stand up, tell us what you want. They always have a hard time telling us what they want. Well, the boss says I have to do this $5 million project, but they've taken all my resources. I don't have any space. I only have half the people. All right, sit down. And everybody writes something on the card that will help him. And 29 other people in the room. Someone writes, well, we just closed down our X project. That space is available for 6 months. You can have that for free. Someone else says, I need 2 tickets to Oprah for my anniversary. And I can't get them. Someone writes, well, my cousin's the assistant producer at Oprah. Got them for you. Just give me a call. Now, when we finish that exercise, people are stunned and shocked. Sometimes we'll say $10, $20 million measurable. And the question is, how did that magic happen? This room is full of resources you and I can't see. And it's in that interaction pattern and in that collective sharing. It's called collective generalized reciprocity. We move from exchange here to the investment in the group. So I give something to him, trusting he's going to give something to him. And all those networks that we can't see are suddenly coming alive in that room, creating collective resources. Leadership is about doing that. How can I better join with others in collective learning? Now, what's that staff meeting this afternoon going to look like? I won't even talk. How can I facilitate more positive, energized conversations? I have become fixed on the notion of conversation because most change happens in the medium of conversation. And when we increase the quality of those conversations, the change process increases in quality. And that starts with me changing me. So those are some interesting lessons coming out of a very strange place. What I hope is that they stimulate a few thoughts that will make a difference when you go to work this morning. Thank you.
Bob, we have a little different Q&A kind of process in the idea of kind of stimulate connections, and that is we take 5 minutes and ask you at the tables to come up with a question for Bob. So it's not just one quick question, but you guys are processing what's going on, you're introducing yourselves to one another, and you're coming up with a collective question for Bob. So if you could take 5 minutes, Bob, you're okay for your time? Okay. And at 8:30, we'll ask each table for a comment or a question. Okay? Fire away.
Drink some more.
I don't know how they measure the top teachers. Clearly, our just teaching to the test.
I suppose that up front, quantitative is the only way to know how to measure it, but really when you go to school, it'll take you long to figure out how to teach it. So they stand out and ask around, watch how they teach, convey, risk it. It's a good analogy between business and teaching. That is business. I don't know what a CEO does.
You have to do that every year. You have to start over again. It's got to be even tougher now. You're not quite a top teacher. You're not sure you're going to have a job. Or whether even the school district's going to be there.
Yeah, that's why Caitlin and my oldest said that they really want to teach a crack. She's here now. We're not happening here. As many things do turn out a great place. It's a great school.
My close Chicago now working, followed his girlfriend there. Switched jobs, job there, and then she broke up with him 3 weeks later. But he's having a good time.
Yeah.
I'm talking.
He's how old is Mike?
25.
Yeah. The youngest is 27. She's in Chicago. Caitlin, my oldest, is 30. She's a teacher. I'm sure both like it.
So, the question, how do you leverage this to other schools and other disciplines?
Well, I think there's a good analogy, a parallel between an interstate school system and say very low esteem on each other and value each other to a company that's negative, period. That's losing money, everyone knows they're losing money, constantly losing jobs, value themselves go down, they're great, how do you as a leader get to that?
All right, a couple more minutes. Get your question ready.
Well, part of it, you know, the motivating teachers, it's back to the old premise, do what you love.
Yeah.
People love what they do.
Kids are kind of...
All right, who's ready with a question? We have a good question coming up here. Patricia Garcia. Patricia, I'm going to give you the bucket. Like, stand up. Say who you are, Patricia.
First of all, Patricia Garcia, I published the Ann Arbor Observer.
Let's give her a hand. That's a good
Online, arborweb.com, and we're in the process of creating a pay-for monthly magazine based on the Observer, because ArborWeb does include information from the Observer, the content of the Observer, primarily the calendar and the city guide will continue that. But the other content, the stories, the features, are placed on the website throughout the month. On a day-to-day basis, you'll find a new content. But what we're doing right now is creating a pay-for publication where you can get that information, all of the information online right away at the beginning of the month. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. Wonderful presentation, thank you. Obviously, our educational system needs this kind of thought process in a transformational change to help our students learn and grow and develop happy human beings. But the question that we have is, how is this research, this work that you're doing, going to be used in going forward? We don't want it to be lost. And what's the next step in the process? Once you see all these changes and can communicate that effectively to other educators, how can it begin to be used so that more and more teachers can benefit from this and include it in their teaching process?
Thank you. First, we're in the very early stages. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of, because of some survey work and so forth. The publication process follows that. That's kind of long and drawn out. But in the meantime, I'm working with this group called the Tell for Kids, who are centered in the middle of this whole movement. And one of the questions that relates to yours that always comes up is, well, what about the other teachers? My belief is those other teachers are as reachable as the kids that come in the room. And they're reachable if we use these same methods, not the methods we normally use. And so one of the things I'm working on with the folks in Ohio is to try to change that mindset in the development of the teachers. And that's just beginning as well, but I think it'll be an interesting journey.
Next. David?
Sure. So, good morning. I'm David Landau. I run two companies in the city. One is Elysium. It's a visionary company working to do home improvement in a new way. And Trivio Studio for Artistic Success. We're a creative career coaching company. At our table, we were talking about transformational leadership related to level 5 leaders from good to great. And it sounds like some of the work you're doing, Bob, is looking at how people not just become level 5 leaders and transformational leaders, but also elevate other people to that state through dissolving of ego, through discovery and destruction of ego. And thinking of the teachers in the classroom who brought the other students in the classroom up to a higher level, where they were mindful and aware of the other students. So do you think some of this newer research is a link for how to become a level 5 leader and also get others to that level?
A couple comments very quickly. One is, one of the things I love about his work is that he asked a POS question, Positive Organization Scholarship, which not knowing he was doing it. He knew he was asking it, but he didn't know it. Because when he looked at the top 11 companies of all time in terms of profit, he was going to the end of the curve. And then he comes back with these strange observations. The CEOs there were humble. And that was contrary to everything we've ever learned. Well, why did he find that? Because he went to a different place. He didn't look at the norm. And then in terms of the becoming, I've written a lot about something called the fundamental state of leadership, which is basically based on 4 questions for getting into it. What result do I want to create? What is my real purpose every moment? 2, am I internally directed? And then 3, and this is where it links into your question, am I other focused? I can be results oriented, I can be very internally directed. Am I other focused? Do I know her needs and interests? And hers and his and the groups? And do I love them while we're being very tough? And then finally, am I externally open? Can I learn in real time? And those last 2 are about that ego. And it really is about transcending the ego. And I'll go back to Mr. Fuller, I am a verb. When that ego takes over, I become a noun. I think that's true.
You see the heads down, those are my coaching clients. Answering those questions. Oh, that's where Rob got that stuff. Anybody else in the room? The other tables? Way in the back there, you guys just talking about the Tigers or, Ari?
Bob, that was great, and I really appreciate it. It's very in sync with what we are doing, so it's interesting to...
Oh, it's good to be confirmed.
Well, it is, absolutely, and in a completely different venue, which is fantastic. I'm kind of curious just how the POS stuff, I mean, we deal with you a lot, and it's so different, I think, than the way the rest of the university is run. What kind of reception do you guys get in the rest of the university community?
That's a really interesting question, because on the one hand, we get a lot of resistance, tremendous resistance. In fact, there are articles written about, here's what's wrong with that. It's not realistic, so on and so forth.
That would be the point of the work.
Yes. On the other hand, it's been 10 years now, and we went from 6 people to now where there's a network of scholars all over the world, probably, I'm guessing 500 serious scholars. Last year, the center was given an award in the Academy of Management for changing the field of organization theory. Tim Cameron just published the new handbook with 80 chapters from scholars around the world. It has taken root, and it's very humbling to see it happen. It's exciting. It's great.
John and Frank over here. Frank?
Frank Ascione, I'm also from the University of Michigan. Our group was...
Well, Frank, I'll be humble here.
What?
What do you do at the university?
Many things. I know what you're leading to. I'm dean of the College of Pharmacy.
There we go.
We actually were struck by the statement you were talking about, authenticity and reality. And I think some of the people here noted that there are environments they work where authenticity is discouraged or not encouraged. And so we were kind of curious, based on your observation, on what conditions can create. If you're going to have to create that, how do you create that type of dialogue?
Thank you. That is absolutely accurate, what you said. It's enormously feared. In my classes, I have the students work on this all the time because they know they can't do it. And we do a number of experiments. It's amazing what happens. I'm thinking of a woman who lives here in town who stood up at the end of one of the classes and said, when I came to the business school, they systematically took out of me everything that I thought was valuable about being a female. She said, what's happened in this class is I realized everything about me that was female was incredibly valuable. What you and I find is terrifying in terms of showing people who we really are is, number one, the greatest source of power available to us. Anytime we claim our authenticity, we've just touched the greatest source of power that we have. That's what changes the world. Peter Block once wrote, all social change begins when one person makes the private public. So if I'm internally directed, and I'm able to say, this is what my values are and this is who I am. We just did a group of bankers. And one of them was a Jewish guy. And I just got the message back to us that he started to wear his yarmulke to work on holy days. Something he never dared to do before. And reported how well he was received. We're so afraid of that authenticity because of what we witness. Well-founded fears. But leadership is about knowing who you are and staking that claim. And the world starts to change when you do it. And when you don't do it, it doesn't change. And yet we're so socialized, so trained not to do that very thing. I think it's a hugely important issue.
I don't know what to think about Facebook in that regard. There's a lot of controversy of people putting themselves out there, and in a way they're being more authentic because they're talking about who they are, what they're interested in for the world to see. I just wonder what your thoughts are about how leaders use social media.
You tricked me with that last phrase. Here's what you started to take. Isn't it interesting how many people are able to get married over the internet who can't otherwise? For better or for worse, but they're able to exercise more courage behind the computer to be authentic and establish these initial relationships than they are in person. I have a blog, it's called the Lift blog. I do it with a couple of my sons and another woman. And this week I wrote about 5 entries on meaningful conversation as a medium of change. And it was all about that very thing. So it's a lever we never think about. We think about all these other power levels that the world has taught us to use as leaders. But it's the most powerful lever. And I think it does apply out there on the social media.
About how your teaching is very personal. And you started out talking a story about Delsa encouraging you to coach. And I think if we don't make ourselves personal, I was very impressed with that when I walked into the business school. And there's Bob telling stories which are not just making Bob look like a great person, but really, a little buffoonery was coming out there too, and a lot of humility. So I think it really, that to me is a change agency kind of thing, saying I could be out there with what a jerk I am, and it's going to help you relate to me better than if I'm the guru teacher. So comments about how you do that and why?
Well, I think that in a sense summarizes it. You could say I'm a jerk and turn everybody off if it's not really from here. But when it's coming from here, well, let me just tell you that one study. Guy at MIT has people come in and make business presentations competitive. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. The week before, he has them come in and holds a party and wires them up and measures heartbeat and all these kinds of things. But the major measure is authenticity. He predicts with 87% accuracy who's going to win the business competition a week before it's held. And he doesn't know anything about the content of the presentation. All he knows is the authenticity level of the person. They did a study where they measured college professors. They showed the first 45 seconds of their first minutes in class the first day, had people fill out the evaluation, then filled it out again at the end of the semester. The correlation was 0.9. In 45 seconds, we knew. In hiring people, they'd ask recruiters, how long does it take you to know if you're going to hire them? 45 minutes. And then they installed bells under the desk, and they said, when you know, press the button. 45 seconds. So that gets back to the Blink book, right? And how fast we process information about each other. And what are we looking for? I want to know, can I trust him? That's what I want to know. And if we can trust each other, we just went up here in terms of our coordination abilities and our creative abilities together. We connect two brains, and now we're a lot smarter than we were before. If we can't trust each other, my brain stays here and his brain stays there. And so, why would we do the kind of work that Rob's suggesting to become more authentic? We have to have a purpose in life. What result do I want to create? Second, what are my values? Am I other focused? Am I willing to be open? Am I willing to learn in real time? Put myself down at her level and interact in a way that we learn. It's a state of being. And that's what these teachers, I think, are telling us.
Any other questions? Yes, Tina.
We were noticing that...
She's humble. Zina's the foremost expert on mediation in the world. Go ahead.
Thank you. We were noticing that you had said that this one teacher went to the conference, was allowed to go to the conference, as long as she didn't talk about it. And we were wondering about what kind of support organizationally is necessary for even these people who are doing the brilliant things in the corner. And is it required to have some organizational support to do that? Or could a department thrive even in the midst of a company where there was no support?
Number one, there are a handful of them that say, I'm in a great school and the principal supports their success. The vast majority are absolutely lonely. And they're doing this on their own. Now, most of the people in this room understand that because you've been there. Not school, but that's what you've done. When Harry asked that question, when we launched POS, we took a lot of heat. It was very scary. When you do something that matters, if you're Martin Luther King, if you're someone that's going to change the world, you're not popular up front. And so the whole notion of empowering ourselves is about going in here and making those hard decisions and moving forward because we believe in that future we want to create. And I think, I was saying to Rob, just look around this room, you feel the positivity level in this room because of the quality of people that are here. And that's because almost all of you have already experienced what we're talking about.
Bob, it's your time.
Okay, great. No, my time's fine. I know a couple people may have to leave, and if so, we'll draw full attention to you and embarrass you, but go ahead. Let's see, Tom.
So our question was, what local businesses that you know of do you see implementing this? We could go look at, model, study from. I assume this is actually one of them. Zingerman.
Yeah, that would be that immediately, as you said that, came to mind. We've already talked about it this morning. But I think that you'll find them in surprising numbers. And yet that same place can hit a jolt and start to slide. And your job is to get it back up again. And we all know what that's like. But I think they're there. It's just like you can go into, well, this last question illustrates. You go to a bad school, walk in and say, what's right here? And suddenly there's that teacher. I had one of these teachers who was retiring. She said, for the last 5 years, we've been getting these scores. My scores have been off the scale, but this is what I've taught for 30 years. She said, never once in 30 years has any administrator ever come to me and said, what are you doing? And that was absolutely across the board. No one looks at what's right in the system. We're trained to solve problems. I was on a plane once, and the guy's talking to me, the young guy sitting there, he said, I'm a manager. I solve problems 10 hours a day. Well, that's great. But if all you do is solve problems, you're never pursuing the purpose. You're preserving value, you're not creating value. And that's what I think we're all about. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but Zingerman was featured in that Small Giants book a few years ago, and there's a community that's arisen kind of around that book called the Small Giants community, which is international actually, and there's a couple hundred companies who are part of this community now, and most of us are, the reason we belong to it is because we subscribe to the positive leadership and creating good culture and all of this other stuff, and so there is kind of this canon of books that we all read and courses that we all take, and we are all trying to implement this type of stuff in our own businesses. It's not easy. We take a lot of heat, because we're not doing it the way you're taught in business school. But we're actually even working now on an outline for a curriculum that could potentially be taught in business schools as well, so that we can try to get these readings and the authors and all of this other stuff out there in a more organized fashion to encourage.
I'm ready to be your student. I want to know all about that.
But if you are looking for businesses, if you go look on that website, smallgiants.org, you'll see many companies. There was a conference in Germany in June that I went to with about 50 companies there from all over the world. And it was the best conference I've ever been to because everybody was already on the same page, and we got to talk about how we were tackling problems in our companies without being worried about taking heat about the approaches that we were taking, because we were all kind of on the same page. So it's great.
That is spectacular.
We got time for one more question, and I'm going to call on the best question asked in the room. Come on up, Deb Christine, who has launched her own very positive business and doing well, first year. So.
Hello. I'm a student of personal transformation, and hearing these ideas come out of academia is pretty exciting. I also just read a book called Think and Grow Rich by Collegiate from 1937, which was like, oh my God, because it's about who you are being, living from your desires, living from your hearts, and knowing that what you create in the world comes from your being. And we had people like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford and Thomas Edison on board with all that, and no one's heard of it. So here we are again, all these ideas are coming out, and my mind is so alive. And what are we going to do to not let that die again? I think that these waves of enlightenment or of illumination have happened many, many times, and who do we need to be as humans to take that?
I think that's a profound question. The leadership literature in science is now probably 70 years old. There's some things we know a lot about in terms of transformation leadership. I would say that the business schools, all the other professional schools, are absolute failures at teaching. we hear constantly in the press, the business press, about ethics and so on. And nothing seems to work. And I believe that all of that stuff fails because of the assumptions we make, which are the normal assumptions we talked about earlier. Unless we learn to teach, unless we first learn to understand it, and what your point is, a lot of people understand this stuff, but communicating it and helping another person into it is entirely different. I teach an EMBA class. They come in there, half of them are cynical because they're already leaders. I have a position at such and such a corporation, and I own a big house, and I've led 2 major chains. What could you possibly teach me? And what I do in there is I say, first of all, here's the basic concept. This is a class about you changing you. That gets their attention. And I say, the way we're going to do that is you're going to find a person to mentor. Maybe at work, maybe at home, maybe someplace else. You have to transform her. And to understand that, we look at some Hollywood movies. We make it real. We say, okay, you have to be that transformational person. And the only way you're going to get this grade is by convincing me you've done it. The humility level shoots up. The learning is incredible by these so-called already leaders. They, in their final papers, they talk about how their life has changed in a matter of 2 months, 3 months. We've got to first understand that we have to do it differently. Because every time you and I turn around, we're being trained by every interaction we have, everything we see on TV, into normal assumptions. To be safe, not authentic, etc., etc., etc. All for good reasons. To transcend all that is hard work. The educational institutions of the world have a long way to go in order to do it. Because,
tell you a story about it to wrap this up, but Bob knows Phil Lynch, who was CEO of Reuters at the time of September 11th, and actually Bob's son Ryan helped write a case study of what happened there. And one of the stories is that Phil Lynch was about 40 years old at the time. He had been a CEO for 3 days on September 11th. He had been appointed August 31st or something like that. And families lost their children in that event, and one family came from the UK, and they were, as you recall, spending days looking for the victims. They didn't know they were victims. They thought they were in hospitals, and nobody turned up in hospitals, or very few people. So I sat with Phil with this family as they were coming to grips with the loss of their son. And after he finished with it, I thought he had done a magnificent job. And I'm a therapist and thinking, my God, I could never have done what he did there. And so afterwards I said, Phil, how did you do this? And how did you? And so I just kept thinking about one thing that I learned in high school from a priest, and that is, this is not about me. And I've taken that and I made it into a little mantra to now call it. This is not about me. And I say that as much as I can, because I think that's the mistake we almost always make as leaders, is we think it's about us, about how we're doing, how we're performing, and we don't see that it's not really about me, it's about the responsibilities I have. So I just thought you would appreciate that story. Let's give Bob a great hand. He is a profound teacher, a great friend, a great father, and a great member of our community. And I would encourage you to read. He's got, about 6, 7 books now. One of my favorites is Change the World. It's an audacious title. Another one where he talks about some of the great thought leaders. Was it Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Jesus? So Bob is not afraid to take on challenging topics. This is something that he's courageous about, and just somebody that I think we can all be proud of in our community. So Bob, we can get you his email if you want to check out his blog. And again, we hope to see you all back here in October, where we're going to be on a bit different topic. Donna just walked in about merit. This is the speaker for next time, and we will be hearing about the efforts to bring digital across the state and how this is changing the face of our state and what we can do here to improve work in all areas, rural, urban, and wherever. So thank you very much for coming. There's food left over. Please bring it back to your places and get better cultures through Zingerman's food. Absolutely.